Am live, so let us hear Pam Morris Walton. Mrs. Walton, we should be able to hear you now.
Refreshing the page.
Okay, thank you so much.
Melissa from Michigan.
You're welcome.
An extra part-time job.
Thank you for
serving
30
joining
seconds
us.
before we're live.
school.
You're welcome.
Still can't afford to put food on our table.
Daniel from California.
How are you?
I am doing fine, just doing fine. You know, it's just I'm doing fine. I'm no
Okay.
complaints at all. Just got a lot on my plate. That's just
All right,
how
we're about
that
to come
goes.
live, and I just got your Facebook pulled up.
Okay.
So I will.
Can you hear her? Can you hear?
I believe so. One second.
Can you hear her? Say something,
I-
Mrs. Walton.
I have to start the show real quick. Sorry.
Hey, this is the day the Lord has made.
Okay, that's it.
We will rejoice and be glad. in it.
Change the world, change the world, change the world. Yes, we can. We can change the world. We can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love. It's not too late. Gotta save the children. We can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. Getting a little bit of feedback. Let's work that out. It is Monday, October 2nd, 2023. Hearing myself? Okay. The Santita Jackson Show coming to you from WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station. Still hearing an echo. Okay. All right. Very good. WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. Sending you all so much love today. Meet my morning stars, Michael, Ann, Robert, Carol out there from the left coast, John Cunningham, and the morning stars are on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Please get over there. We're going to talk about this last minute deal to avoid the government shutdown. And also, now Speaker McCarthy's speakership is on the line. But what really at the heart of this, the sticking point, it seems, was Ukraine. So let's talk about that. Maybe this will open or create the environment in which we can discuss why we're there, when we're getting out. Congressman Jonathan Jackson was on the Keep Hope Alive show yesterday, and he said he was in a conference with his, he said this on the air, with his colleagues in Congress. And Pam Morris Walton, he said, well, has anyone talked to Putin?
Yes.
You would have thought that he had shouted something profane in the room.
My goodness.
He said, well, you don't shoot your way out of war, you negotiate your way out of war. I mean, back channel something, because you just can't have open-ended war. I mean, this is costing us more than $100 million while we're offering $700 per family to the people of Lahaina. While Americans are struggling, while you have Americans who are pushing against migrant workers who are being brought into the United States, and they're being brought in, because we lost a lot of people during the pandemic too, and we are messing with their countries, so their countries are now too unstable for them to stay in those countries. Oh yeah, I mean, a lot of folks, they want to stay home. They're not running toward freedom, they're running away from chaos that we've helped and our corporations have helped to create. That's just a fact. So let's talk about that. I mean, are migrants the problem, or is homelessness the problem? Homelessness was the problem for people in expensive areas before they got here. Why don't we resolve that? Why don't you fix the blame and not the fix the problem and not the blame? How about that? Stop beating up people, because ain't nobody indigenous to the United States but indigenous people. Nobody. So stop talking about folks coming in here taking your land. No, it's not yours. We have not figured out a way to live up to a true treaty with indigenous people yet. I don't know how we get so forgetful. After you run from one form of tyranny. Black people had to do it on these shores. And then you want to embrace hurting someone else. No. Are they getting a lot of help? Yes, and so should you. That's what you should be fighting for. Don't fight them. Fight for your piece of the pie. By fighting each other, we are missing the point. We're not fighting the power. And that is why we don't win. Hi, I'm Santita Jackson. We're going to talk with Cook County Commissioner Bill Lowry at the bottom of the hour and Israel Roca. He's head of the Cook County Health uh, Organization. And it is the whole system that enables every resident of this county to get superior health care. The Stroger Hospital is one of the top hospitals in the country, public or private, and you have access to it. So while people are losing their jobs, embarrassed to talk about that, embarrassed about being in the county system, we have one of the most robust and one of the best healthcare systems in the country. And I want you to know how to use it. Pam Morris Walton, I want people to know you can get a primary care physician. Black and Indigenous people have the worst health outcomes of any group in the country. You know, we're fighting with insurance to get cancer tests and exams and follow up. No, if you get in the county system, you shouldn't have that fight. So we're going to be talking about that today. Let's get to some of these headlines on the Santita Jackson Show. Congress reached a last-minute deal to avoid a government shutdown. What happened with hours to spare on Saturday? The House and the Senate passed a stopgap spending measure to keep the government open through mid-November. We're going to see what's going to happen. What it's missing is funding for Ukraine. Let's talk about that. I want you to call me at 773-763. WCPT 773-763-9278. Let me know what you think about this deal that's going to last 45 days. Do you think that we should stop funding Ukraine? Do you think we should continue funding Ukraine? You need to think there needs to be find out what we're doing in Ukraine, when this is going to end. Do you want more aid yourself? I think you do. And now Speaker McCarthy is facing calls for his removal, specifically from Congressman Matt Gaetz. We'll see if that's going to work. Donald Trump's fraud trial in New York starts today. New York Attorney General Letitia James alleges that Trump and his company inflated the values of its assets to defraud lenders and insurance companies. The former president faces $250 million in financial penalties and could be forced to sell his New York properties. He's expected to testify at some point. The Supreme Court's term begins today. The Supreme Court will review gun regulations, voting rights. There are a lot of big cases before them, including looking at social media and possible restrictions are they going to remove political content, or are they going to let everything ride? California Governor Gavin Newsom named Senator Dianne Feinstein's replacement, and she is a Black woman, the first openly gay Black woman who will be serving in the U.S. Senate. LaFonza Butler, she's the president of Emily's List, but she has been prominent in the labor movement in California. And she has, through Emily's List, supported female Democratic politicians and candidates all over the country. It will fulfill his promise to appoint a Black woman to the seat. But what's going to happen with Barbara Lee? She's already running. There's some other people running. Boy, oh boy, California politics is going to be really exciting. And those are some of the headlines in Chicago. Extraordinarily warm today, everybody. In the high 70s, we might even get into the 80s. It will be clear. Set a record in Minneapolis, St. Paul. Everybody, please try to stay cool. It was 92 degrees there yesterday. Can you believe? In October? 83 degrees today, but we're getting a heat front in this part of the country, and now it's moving east. In Major League Baseball, the Rockies 3, the Twins 2, the Brewers 4, they shut out the Cubs. The Cubs, nothing. The Padres 2, the White Sox 1, wrapping up the 162-game baseball season this past weekend. Now we're moving into the playoffs in the NFL. The Vikings 21, the Panthers 13, and come on, Bears, a heartbreaker. The Broncos 31, the Bears 28. In the WNBA, well, now the final is set. It will be the Las Vegas Aces versus the New York Liberty. They won their respective series this past weekend. The Liberty 87 over the Sun 84, a heartbreaker. The Aces 64, the Wings 61. Well, now we're going to see who are going to be the champions of the WNBA. Yay. Pam Morris Walton, it is always a pleasure to be with you today as you give me the amen through these crazy headlines. Every day it's something.
Yes. It's real. We are in real time, Santita.
Absolutely.
And you're just telling it like it is. You are. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Let me tell you, today's good news is because of so much that is going on around us, and maybe even personally. I don't know. I cannot say that about anyone that is connected to us today. But the title I want to share with you today, and it's very brief, is Don't Give Away Your Joy. Don't give away your joy. 5 words. You are God's person. Now, if you're a woman that's listening, you're God's woman. You're a man, you're God's man. And you are included. You are royalty. That's right, man or woman. One of the songs that my ancestors sang, I want to just give you a few of the words this morning. This joy I have, the world didn't give it to me. Actually, Santita could sing it. This world didn't give it to me, and this world can't take it away. You have joy. Jesus has given that to you. Our Creator has given that to you. Don't let the world and don't let one individual take it away from you. Don't let people or circumstances steal your joy. There is a lot going on in this world. Difficult situations will come into your life. They may come into my life, but there is no way to escape them because they come. But in the world, you have tribulations. It tells you in the Word of God. But be of good cheer. When a trial of life comes your way, you don't have to be defeated or depressed. Be of good cheer. Hold on to your joy at all circumstances. If you've lost your joy, retrieve it right now. Retrieve your joy right now, this morning, for this day and beyond. Tell yourself this day and every day, I am God's person. Jesus gave me joy. I am a person of joy. Okay, don't let anything take dominion over what tries to interfere with your joy. Remember who you are. You're God's child. Don't let anyone take away your joy. That's it. Have a great day, everybody.
Amen. I love that. This joy I have, the world didn't give it to me, and the world can't take it away, not unless
Okay.
you give it
give
away.
it to them.
That's right, not unless you give it to them, and don't give anyone that power. That's something that I've learned.
Thank you.
Don't let people prompt you to act in an ugly way. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that.
Don't go there. Don't go there. Don't go there. Don't allow them to take you there, Santita. No one.
But that's
no
so
one
hard.
deserves that.
That's so hard. That's so
but
hard.
It's real. It's real. We can do it with God's help. With God's help, we can do it.
Okay.
The power is in the tongue.
Oh,
the power is in the tongue.
And
fight it.
And these powerful
keep
thoughts.
From letting somebody hurt you.
That's
yes,
right.
it is.
And these thoughts.
Yes.
And these thoughts.
All right.
Pam Morris Walton, how can we get your book?
You can get my book on PamMorrisSpeaks.com. That's an autographed copy. Or just go to Amazon and get it. It's an ebook. It is iTunes. It's a hardback and a soft copy. You can carry around with you. So many people right now are going through medical challenges.
Mm-hmm.
If you read this book, it'll help you because I'm 7 years. All right.
I love it.
No
I love
rejection
it.
and no infection to give up. Okay.
Amen.
Later.
Because we're talking about that today at the bottom of the hour with Cook County Commissioner Bill Lowry, because, for those of us who don't have private insurance, and let me tell you, you are a step away from your circumstances completely changing. I want you to know that the county system here in the state of Illinois, number one, we're home to one of the top hospitals in the country, Stroger, one of the top hospitals, and you have access to excellent health care. And Commissioner Bill Lowry is bringing Israel Roca, who's head of that system, to show us how we can access it, how we can get a primary care physician, how Black women who get breast cancer more frequently, we're diagnosed last and we die first. indigenous
Yeah.
women, their health outcomes are worse than ours. We're going to be talking about how we can access this wonderful healthcare system and be well. And be well. So, I'm sending you much love because I want you, we need to, I keep saying this, but this week we're going to talk about you and this transplant journey that you've been on. And just because many of us are afraid of that. And we're reluctant to be donors. And there's just a lot. And, and Black people and people who've been marginalized have a story. So we're going to be talking. I want to talk with you about that. Sending you much love, everybody.
And it is breast cancer.
Yes.
You must. It's breast cancer awareness month of Santita, and people need to take care of themselves because over 240,000 women are diagnosed every year with this, and hundreds of thousands die.
Absolutely, and you don't have to.
Okay, you don't have to.
You
can make it. All right.
Okay, I love it. I love you, and thank you for that. That's why we're talking about health. That's why we're going to do that. That's why we're going to talk about that. And now, of course, that pivots us to Dr. Shanina Knighton, who stayed with us for a couple of days last week. And for that, I'm so grateful because I know that your schedule is jam-packed as we talked with Commissioner Bill Lowry. And so today, he's coming back on, Cook County Commissioner Bill Lowry. He's bringing Israel Roca, who's head of our Cook County healthcare system, so that you can have access to that. You don't have to have private insurance, everybody. Everybody doesn't have that. That doesn't mean that you do not have the right or have access to excellent healthcare. You actually have one of the top hospitals in the United States that is part of two of them that are part of the county healthcare system here in the county of Cook. So we're going to be talking with them about that. Mr. Israel Roca at the bottom of the hour. Dr. Shanina Knighton, what's on your mind today?
Good morning, Santita. How are you?
I am doing fine. I'm doing fine. You got health on my brain. Got health on my brain.
I bet, and as you heard our previous speaker say, health is a big deal, and it's a lot of people that's sick right now. But I more so want to talk about stress, the immune system, and risk for infection. As you know, like right now, there is a tremendous amount of things going on. So whether people were stressed out about whether or not the government was getting ready to shut down, the day-to-day, when we talk about inflation as we face food prices, changes in healthcare insurance, a lack of job security, there are so many things that can stress us out. When you are stressed out, what happens is your body is constantly in this fight mode, trying to protect you from yourself. Meaning that instead of, let's say, fighting off germs and things that would be external to your body, you're fighting off things that are inside of your body, which of course is the stress. So with that, what will then happen is as you're fighting off stress or dealing with stress, you're lowering your immune system. So your body's immune response to be able to fight outside things then becomes compromised. So I know that there are situations for which we can change. There are situations that we cannot change. However, some tidbits that I will tell you to help offset some of those effects that may be a result of stress is making sure that you are sleeping an adequate amount each and every night, including you, Santita. The other piece would be health, and I'm talking about what it is that you're consuming. We know, and I've said this time and time again, that just 25 grams of sugar lowers your immune system for 5 hours. Yes, lowers your immune system for 5 hours. So that could be a pastry and a cup of coffee. If you are stressed out, coupled with eating sugary products, which are going to lower your immune system, you are setting yourself up to be vulnerable to a cold, vulnerable to the flu, or any bug that you may encounter. So I just mentioned exercise. I just mentioned, I actually mentioned sleep, and I mentioned eating. And then there is exercise. So exercise has a tremendous amount of benefits in terms of it releasing cortisol. And cortisol which is an indicator of stress. When you release that hormone, you don't have to worry about that buildup in your body and your body trying to fight it off. So exercise, sleep, and diet are some of the most important things that you can do right now to help your immune system. When you know that you are going into a stressful season, it's interesting because you should do things to offset the stress. Meaning, yes, sometimes people that are worriers, it's hard to tell them not to worry. And then you have those that are warriors that'll say, hey, I'm not going to worry. Either way, the best thing that I can express to you is this, is to try to offset what it is that you are experiencing. So if you are stressed out from your job, you may say, I need to take an extra jog today. If you say, hey, I'm not a jogger and I don't like working out, if you stressed out, say, I'm actually going to cut back on consuming sugar so I don't have to worry about getting myself sick. If you know that you are not sleeping because you are staying up late for projects and you are getting things done, the worst thing that you can do is make bad eating decisions while you are having to stay up late because, again, it is going to further lower your immune system. So what I'm sharing with you is yes, it is very challenging for most people to be balanced between sleep, eating, exercise, which I just mentioned. But the thing is that you have to know, what do you have to offset in order for you to not get sick? Infections are a real thing. They come as a result of a lowered immune system. And so it's very important that you stay ready so you don't have to get ready. Because like I say, if you do not make time for your wellness, you will be forced to make time for your illness.
If you do not take this time, everybody, take time and nurture your wellness. You're going to end up having to nurse that illness. Dr. Shanina Knight and everybody. Hey, Dr. Nina, HEYDRNINA. Let's continue this health discussion. Let's talk about how you can access a system. If you don't have private health insurance, if you are in the ACA system, I mean, there's just so much that the Cook County healthcare system can offer you. I want you to know so that if we are facing a shutdown in 45 days, or if you take a hit with your job, I want you to know that you can have healthcare. And it can be excellent. 2 of the top hospitals in the country are right here in our healthcare system, the county healthcare system. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a minute. Dr. Knighton, how you doing? I'm sorry that was in your ear, babe. You know, I'm.
Oh no, you fine.
Coming on the air.
Listen, look, if I'm expecting nothing else, I can expect you with that.
Absolutely.
With that thing.
Yeah, because I'm like, honey, I got other stuff to do, because I always start doing something else just before I come on the air. And I'm like, I saw this, because I'm listening to the news up until I get on the air. And
yeah, no, nothing's wrong with that. So much going on.
Yeah. And it changes, my questions and what I'm looking for. So there's that. But did you have a good weekend?
Honestly, Santita, look, that's why I'm talking about stress and wellness, because look, it was a good thing. So we are blessed. So my husband, we did purchase our first commercial property.
Oh,
so
congratulations.
So our warehouse for our used appliance business. And so when I tell you, though, we have been up between us and these kids trying to get things together so we could be open today.
Well, you know what? However we can be supportive, please let us know. Okay?
Yeah. Okay.
Please let me know. I want to know how I can be supportive. And I have some friends in where you are, and I want you to meet them. My prom date was from Cleveland. Some Shaker.
Shaker is
Shaker Heights
is a prominent place.
Oh yeah, but girl, look, that was a rock in this place. I was like, no, this is pitiful that the suburb of
it's
the
actually
city.
crazy. It is. So Robert, you know who Robert Madison is?
Yeah.
So he was in that area and in Cleveland Heights, and it was the craziest thing because he shared his story, and I had no idea that they were bombing. Like, they were actually bombing. They bombed houses, and so he was one of the first Black families to move into the area.
Hi, Miss Jackson.
Yeah.
There was
We have Mr. Roca and Mr. Valerie ready to go, and we have a minute and a half.
their father was the first mayor, and they were the first Black family in Shaker.
Look, let me tell
And
you.
so,
See, I'm a little older than you.
yeah, Laura Ritchie is the.
So
You said what?
I'm a little older than you. So that's my group who had to deal with, as you know,
Yeah.
we moved into these neighborhoods that had been restricted. I didn't realize that my parents' neighborhood where we grew up had been restricted up until about 5 or 6 years before we lived there. And Commissioner Lowry would know this. Just being a Chicagoan, it's only when I've been going to these different events, well, like neighbors who've been passing. You know, Gail Sayers, the Hall of Fame running back, Mr. Roca, lived 2 blocks up.
Yep.
Wow.
But George Hallis, who owned the Bears, had to buy his house for him in 1967, I think it was, or 65.
Wow.
Because he could not live in the neighborhood. So Mr. Hallis, you know, people thought that
30 seconds.
Mr. Hallis was being generous, and he was. But the fact is, in what became one of the most desirable what had been one of the most desirable neighborhoods in Chicago, Black people couldn't buy in, and this was and while he's the top running back in the league, so what? Mr. Roca, it's wonderful to meet you, and thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much. Good morning. Thank you.
Stand by, about to come back.
My fellow New Yorker, I love it.
We can change the world.
Absolutely.
Change the world. Change the world. We can change the world. We can change the world. Change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love. It's not too late. Gotta save the children. We can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. You know, you hear my little put in the background because, you know, I'm always pulling a lot of information. I listen to the news literally right up until we get on the air. I'm always listening, trying to find something else for you. And, you know, Commissioner Bill Lowry, who was on the show a couple of times last week, who had a tremendous fair, free health fair. And I cannot wait. Oh, wow. I heard a lot of my friends went. And I'm sorry that I couldn't go. But I've had some health challenges myself. I'm just getting over pneumonia. So now I really try to pull, you know what, I've had it before. And okay, Dr. Knighton, I know you think I shouldn't go, but I have. And I know how to manage it because my father's had it a lot of times. Thank you, Daddy. That's one of the wonderful things that he gave me. An immune system that I got. Thank you. That's what one of my brother Yusef said. Oh, thanks, Dad. Love you. Appreciate it. Thank you for that. So that's right. This challenged immune system. Yikes. But, you know, it is what it is. And so I had to get in bed a little early because, you know, my doctor said, look, there's nothing I can give you, kid. You gotta get some rest. I'm texting and whatnot and looking at all my information. But one of the things that you were very inspiring to me last week when you talked about your prostate cancer journey. And, you know, this is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. I've had 2 aunts who've had it, one who expired from it. And I know that, you know, Black women get breast cancer. I mean, at a high rate, but we're the last diagnosed and the first to die. But Indigenous women have worse health outcomes than Black women. So I don't want to forget anybody here. Hispanic women are right behind us. I mean, this is a real struggle, and I'm so glad that you're bringing this man with us, someone who's really a first among equals in his field, someone who understands public health care. Many of the top hospitals, if you will, they're private hospitals. But we need to understand, and that's why even with the government shutdown that was averted, at least for 45 days, Commissioner Lowry.
Right.
You said, well, do you still want to go with this? I said, yeah, because now we need to look at the fact that we have one of the top healthcare systems in the country. We have access to it, but we don't know that we have access to it. And we don't know how to use it. And we need to understand, because a lot of people are losing their jobs or their money's getting tight, Commissioner Lowry, and they need to go into the county system. And there's nothing wrong with that. And you said, don't forget about the gem of Providence Hospital. Thank you, Dr. Daniel Hale Williams, first open heart surgery, Black surgeon at Providence Hospital. And just down through the years, they have served the underserved. And this is something that Mr. Rocha does for a living, and they move him all around the country because he's the best at it. So why don't you introduce Mr. Rocha and just help us to understand what we have access to? People need primary care physicians, Commissioner Lowry.
That's right. That's right.
We're fighting to get, exams, breast exams. They're telling Black women we need to get the tests earlier, but we can't get them. I mean, I'm just tired of that fight. So talk to us, Commissioner Lowry, and introduce us to Mr. Rocha.
It will be my pleasure, Santita. And Dr. Knighton, it's good to be back on with you and with all of our neighbors who are listening. I'm just so proud of the work that Israel Rocha has done as CEO of Cook County Health. And believe me, he will be able to lay out just every offering that we have. But what makes me so proud is we don't turn anyone away. And for years and years and years, we have not had the kind of health care in our community that we deserve, the kind of health care that is our right. And that's why I'm so proud to be able to partner with Israel Rocha in Cook County Health. Remember what I said last week about charity care. We're the leader in the area of charity care. And that is woven in with the fact that we don't turn away anyone who needs care. So with that, I want to shine a light on, I think that CEO of any, forget public hospital, but any hospital organization in this entire country, Israel Rocha.
Well, absolutely. And pardon me for mispronouncing your name as a Santita. I am very, very sensitive to that because everyone wants to call me Santina. But I think it's a Mississippi thing. I'm not mad at anybody. Look, the old folks who I know, they call me Santina. Albertina Walker used to call me Santina. And then she'd tell other people, don't you dare call her Santina. I'm Albertina. She loves Tina. And so I took it. I love it. I love it. I love it.
I love it.
I love it. But Mr. Rocha, help us to understand. Okay, let's just start at the beginning. You don't turn anyone away, which is fantastic. I remember the push to make Stroger Hospital, to name it after John Stroger, who was the president of the Cook County Board of Commissioners. No one served, as you well know, Commissioner Lowry, no one was more dedicated to public service than John Stroger. So this hospital, it is a fitting, it's a wonderful capstone to his legacy, but he's done so much more. He did so much more than that. That having been said, what do we have access to? Do we have access to primary care physicians? Because many people will call in or they send me DMs and they say, I don't have a primary care physician and I don't have insurance. And people are almost embarrassed about that. I'm like, do you know how expensive insurance is? Mr. Rocha, what can we get in this system?
Good morning. Absolutely. And I just want to say good morning. Thank you so much for having me. And thank you so much to Commissioner Lowry. And I do want to say that thanks to the support of President Perkwinkle and the Cook County Board of Commissioners, especially Commissioner Lowry, we have some amazing services at our Providence campus and throughout any one of our 17 locations, but especially our Providence campus. Most recently, over the last few months and over the last 2 years, we have really invested in Providence. You now have access to primary care services right there at Providence and at 17 locations throughout the county and at Stroger. We have very advanced specialties, so almost every specialty service that you can imagine, from dermatology, vascular, plastics, neurology, cardiology, nephrology, is just available at your fingertips, and it's available to everyone, regardless of your ability to pay, regardless of any other challenges that you may have. We're going to work with you. We have redone our emergency department at Providence to be able to take ambulance runs. And most recently, we opened our outpatient dialysis center and restarted inpatient dialysis. We bought a new MRI machine, and we just purchased a 3D mammography advanced breast cancer screening machine. Pretty much anything that you have, any healthcare need, we're here for you. And you can do one of two things. You can simply walk into one of our campuses and say you need help, or you can call 312-864-6000, and we're going to find a way to help you. We are here to help you for whatever condition you are facing. We're here to be your partner.
So let me ask you this. So what does that mean exactly? Does it mean that, because, many of us, Commissioner Lowry, I think that's one of the complaints that the private hospitals have had and that people have about those of us who are living on the margins and those of us who are grinding it out every day, that we treat the emergency room as the doctor's office.
Yes, the primary care physician.
Yeah.
Right. That's exactly right. Mm-hmm.
So back this up. I mean, are you saying that, can we go get annual exams or, just every year, like Commissioner Lowry wisely said, on your birthday, get this exam. I mean, that helps you to, to get your breast cancer exams, to get your prostate cancer exams, to get your other exams. How does that work in the county system, Mr. Rocha?
Absolutely. Again, as I said, all you have to do is come on in. We're going to help you. You can get your primary care doctor. You can get your specialist. You can get all your exams. You can get full pharmaceutical coverage and benefits and not have to worry about your ability to pay. So what happens is you come in, we ask you some questions, we get the plan that's best for you, and cost is never a reason to stay away. If you cannot afford the care, we are going to be here for you, and we're going to take care of it. And it means you get everything. You get a primary care doctor, you get a specialist, you get the pharmacy benefits that you need, you get your screening services that you need, you get your imaging services, whatever it takes for you to be your healthiest and live your best life. We're going to be here for you, and we're going to make sure you get it.
We're talking with Israel. Commissioner Bill Lowry. I just want everyone to know who we're talking to. You brought the guy at the top of the heap. You said, no, I'm going to bring
That's right.
Mr. Rocha.
I don't play.
Well, you don't play, but I want to thank you for this, because even in spite of the fact that they were able to avert this shutdown for at least 45 days, the thing is, I hear constantly people who are uninsured or who are underinsured, because a lot of us are underinsured.
That's right.
Even though you work hard every day, you're working.
That's right.
And so, my thing is, wait a minute. I know Stroger, because I have a lot of friends who are physicians. You're married to a doctor. She's a dentist. We know a lot of people who say, no, Stroger, don't sleep on that. Don't sleep on Provident. These are great hospitals.
But see, this is what's so important. So often by the time you go to the emergency room, something's already going on.
Yeah.
You need help. You need treatment. But what we have to do as a community is to have opportunities for preventative care.
Okay.
And that way, not only will our life expectancy be actualized, because we already talked about the 20 to 30-year difference between life expectancy on the south side versus the north side, but overall costs will be less. It costs a whole lot more for me to go into surgery than it does for me to have a blood test, which says to me, hey, this is an area you need to be concerned about, and with your doctor, we're going to treat it. So that's the import of having your own primary care physician.
But are you saying that you can go in and just say, you know what, I need an exam? I mean, I need a physical. Is that the appropriate use of it? Can you use the county system that way?
As CEO Rocha just said, you can call up and you can say that you need to have a primary care physician in our network, and we'll help you do just that. And that's one of the reasons why I had the 5 different physicians at my men's health fair last week. One of the big drivers was I wanted all of the community members to come up, meet them, and if they needed their own personal or primary care physician, they started that process right there during the fair last Thursday. That is just an important facet of preventative medicine, and we have to avail ourselves to that, and we deserve that. So yes, that is what we can do.
Because Mr. Rocha, most of us don't know that we can go to we can call, what is the number, and then just say, okay, I need my physical. I need my annual physical.
Absolutely. All you Yes, ma'am. All you have to do is call 312-864-6000, and that's gonna start the process, or just come on into our doors, and we are gonna get you started to be able to get your primary care doctor, so you know who your primary care doctor is. You can get your annual physical. You can get access to any specialty care that you're going to need. And one of the things that people don't know is that the quality of the instruments is getting better, and we are one of the best health centers. We just got recognized at the Providence campus as one of America's great community hospitals, and at Stroger we got recognized as the #1 most racially inclusive hospital in the country. And what that looks at, it looks at your outcomes and your care, that they're top quality. They're top quality for everyone of all races, all backgrounds, and all ability, and that your leaders understand those voices and the patients that you're serving. And we are the #1 most racially inclusive, high-performing hospital in the country by the Sloan Institute, and we are also the 2nd most racially inclusive hospital in the country, recognized for quality outcomes and needs of underserved communities in the country. And so we are very proud, and we consistently rank as one of the top performers by U.S. News and World Report.
Yes.
We have leading specialists in all the fields.
I see all your wonderful stamps from U.S. News and World Report. I mean, but that's a that's a big deal, Mr. Rocha, because no one wants to deal with a cancer diagnosis, or just even the thought of it is frightening. Yeah, and you know this better than anyone, Commissioner Lowry. And so, many Black women and Indigenous women and brown women, I would say some white women too now, I'm not excluding anyone. You feel that lump, or you don't even search for it. You don't want, and then others are like, you know what? I've got so much on my mind. I've got my children, I've got my husband, I've got my partner, because that's what women do. I can't deal with this right now. And Commissioner Lowry and Mr. Rocha, I don't have the money anyway. I'm not going to fight with them about going like with Mr. Mendoza. You tell him that his PSAs are extremely high. He has to fight with you to get the MRI, and he's privately insured. And then you won't give him the test. I mean, you won't give him the biopsy.
CEO, I don't know.
What?
This is something very important that Santita is talking about. I met Mr. Mendoza last week, and he had a PSA level of 16. He had gone through the process as far as he needed to have a biopsy, and then his insurance dropped him. So we were able to get him connected to Dr. Turner at Providence, and he's going to get the treatment that he deserves right at Providence. So I'm so proud that we were able to do that through the assistance of Santita in this show. So I just wanted to share that that's going on at Providence, and that's the kind of real effort that we're seeing at Providence that makes me so proud. And you heard CEO Rocha talk about it, but let me just peel this onion a bit. Just over the last couple of years, we cut the ribbon on the new dialysis center. Now, Santita, you know me well enough to know at the press conference, I used that as an opportunity to say we still can't keep feeding our kids blue juice and cinnamon rolls in the morning. We need healthy food in our community too.
Did you say blue juice and cinnamon? Man, please.
That's exactly
Henry,
what I said. We
put
got
him
to
on
stop
mute.
that.
Mute him. Mute him. Right.
That.
Leave him. Mute him. Get him off of here.
and then we talked about cutting the ribbon on the MRI center, and that is so. You just cannot overstate how important that is.
But
MRI,
you know what? Wait a minute.
They either
but let me put a pin in that. Now they bundle Happy Meals, but they don't bundle fruit and vegetables.
No. See, I told you now. Blue juice and cinnamon rolls. We've got to do better than that.
Leave those babies with them second smiles alone. Blue juice.
That's right. That's right.
I mean,
that's right.
But you're right. But look we've got food deserts.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
And it's cheaper. I mean, I don't want my child to go to school, and the child doesn't want to go to school hungry. This is, oh wow.
We have to bring the healthy food to the community, and it's just like bringing healthcare to the community. These are fundamental rights, and that's what I and others in this space must fight for. That's why we're here.
Okay. And the urban gardens that First Lady Michelle Obama, our forever First Lady, which she was fighting for. My mother's turned my parents' backyard into a farmland, but this is farmland, right? So she said, "Hey, no, I'm gonna have my tomatoes. I'm gonna have my okra.
Yep.
I mean, she has all that stuff, and it's in the driveway. It looks crazy. I'm not. Yes, I'm calling my mother out. It looks crazy. You got vines just. Oh my. Oh, mom. But guess what? She has vegetables. And, and you're right, we have to do something about that with all these vacant lots. And maybe that's something that, I know President Preckwinkle, who is a beloved teacher before she became in politics.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone loves Mrs. Preckwinkle. Everyone loves her. And that's one of the things I love about her, that her former students love her so much. She was a great teacher.
That's right.
We've got to find a way to use these vacant lots, not just to put glass and steel fabulous buildings on them, but people need to be able to walk into the garden and get something to eat.
That's exactly right.
But we
That's
also
exactly
have
right.
to explain, that's why I'm so glad that you brought Mr. Rocha here. We have to explain that when a Mr. Mendoza or Mr. James or Mr. Smith, Juanisha, Pookie, Juan, Maria, you can, any Eastern European name you can give me, all of that. That if your insurance drops you, you can go right into the county system and get taken care of. Because many of us don't know that, Commissioner Lowry, Mr. Rocha.
Mm-hmm. 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 That's the message. That's the message.
Absolutely. And you're speaking about food at Cook County Health and at Providence Grocer and all our clinics. We believe food is medicine. We're real excited that we have an ability where we'll ask you some questions, and if you need access to some fruits and vegetables, we can help you with that. Last year, we gave over 98,000 pounds of food. We can also help you with your SNAP benefits, your WIC enrollment, whatever you need to be able to eat healthy, to get your health in gear. We're going to be your partner too.
So you can talk to a nutritionist and say, look, I want to eat differently. I'm pre-diabetic. I'm diabetic. I'm trying to manage my diabetes. I don't want to go into diabetes. They told me I need to have a low carb, high protein diet, or I don't have blue juice and cinnamon rolls. That's what I've got. Oh man, I can't believe you said that, but it's true. It is blue. I mean, an unnatural blue too, looking crazy. Something that you can paint the walls with, literally. I mean, it's terrible, but that's real. So, I mean, so how does that work?
We're gonna.
How do people get food assistance through Cook County Health?
So we come in and we ask you, when you're coming in for your annual physical, for your visit to see your primary care doctor, even when you come into the emergency room, we ask you some screening questions. And if you answer, that you need assistance in those questions, we're going to then help you get connected to our counselors. We're going to make sure that if you qualify for benefits, we're going to help you register. We're going to make sure that you have all the resources that you need. As we said, we want to be your partners for your overall health, not just for the one ailment that you come in, but to help you live your healthiest life. That's the mission that the President Preckwinkle, Commissioner Lowry, and the commissioners have said that we have to do, and we are working night and day to make sure that we do it. And we started these new programs that we're here to help you. All you have to come in is I would say, to answer your question, pick up the phone and call us, or come into our location. That starts your journey for health, and it has other benefits that we're here to help you, including our food program.
Wow. Commissioner Lowry, I had no idea that there was a food program associated with Cook County Health. Had no idea.
That's right. No, that's right. There's a whole lot. And at Providence, over the last 2 years, we've had a scholarship initiative. And this is just another area. I'm just so proud. I'm so proud about this. But the scholarships have been awarded to students pursuing a career in healthcare. Really? And in year one, we awarded over $500,000. And this year, CEO Rocha, you'll tell me the exact figure, but I know we're expecting to award $900,000 in scholarship resources to our students from our community who are pursuing a career in healthcare. I think that is just so vital and important, because today is important, yes, but tomorrow is also important. This is an investment in our community and in our youth.
Well, CEO
Absolutely.
Israel Rocha, the last minute belongs to you.
Absolutely. For any student who wants to become a nurse, become a doctor, become a dentist, become part of the allied health field, every year on our website they can come in and learn. We have a scholarship. We've now been doing it for 2 years. Commissioner Lowry is correct. The first year we gave $500,000, and this last year we gave over $1 million in scholarships to 60 students. And this scholarship pays for your start at an undergraduate, for your master's, all the way through medical school. So as long as you are willing to put in the work, we will renew your scholarship from freshman year all the way till you finish your medical school year. It's a new scholarship that was started. The President Preckwinkle and the commissioner said this was important, and we wanted to make sure that everyone had access to not only get health care, but to help become part of the healthcare system. And so we've been having this scholarship now for 2 years. We gave $500,000 the first year. This last year, we gave over $1 million scholarships to 60 students, and we're hoping to change the lives next year of 90 students, and even try to see if we can give $1.5 million next year.
Israel Rocha, I'm so glad that you're in Chicago now. I'm so glad you all snatched him out of New York. Had to get him out of there. And I love New York. That's my other home. You know, I'm not mad. But I'm glad he's here. Israel Rocha, everybody, the CEO of Cook County Health. But you know what? I want you to come back here, Commissioner Lowry and Mr. Rocha. Because I really think it's important that you have to let them know constantly what's available. You know, hearing it one time is important, but they need to hear it all the time, because this is such wonderful news, but it's shocking. It really is shocking. I mean, that you have scholarships available, that you can call in and start on your healthcare journey, get you a primary care physician, start getting your annual physicals. That way your health can be tracked. So you're not going to, and
we'll be back soon.
That's right. And you got to come back, because, you know, if you're dropped by your private insurer, you can go right into the county system and they will take care of you. And you have some of the best physicians and some of the best hospitals. Ask US News and World Report. That's right. Stroger and Providence are two of the best hospitals in the country, and you have access to it. Commissioner Bill Lowry, you know I love you. Please give my love to Dr. Cheryl.
Love you right back.
Oh, absolutely.
I will. Thank you.
And we're not going to exclude Mr. Rocha. We love you too, Mr. Rocha.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Man, doing all this great work. Oh, sending you so much love. And you got to come back so we can talk about these scholarships and just talk about how we can really be as healthy as we can. Sending you all so much love. Let's talk about Ukraine and the shutdown. Back in just a minute. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks for having us. That was wonderful. We appreciate you.
Oh, I appreciate you, but you got to come back. Okay?
We will. You know,
Okay.
I'll be back, and I'll bring them with me.
That's right. You need to just bring him on back. Y'all come back now. You hear?
Thank you, CEO. I appreciate you. All right, Dr. Knighton, be blessed. Bye-bye.
You know, but sending you so much love, but I really want you to come back, because I want people to know what you're doing. Okay?
Okay. All right. We'll be back. There's a lot more to say.
There is a lot more to say. Right. And you send me have your staff send me some notes. And, like things that you want to talk about, okay?
Okay. All right. I appreciate you, my sister.
I appreciate you, my dear brother. Sending you much love. And my brother sends his love to you.
Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Absolutely. Bye-bye. All right, everybody, let's get back. CEO Rocha, just know that you have my number. If you ever want to talk about anything, please do not hesitate to call me.
Hi, Ms. Jackson.
Yes.
We have Dr. Gibbs, Mr. Green, and Mr. McKee ready to go.
Wonderful. Let me go on and say hello to them. I'm going to be pulling some things up on my... Mr. Green?
Good morning, sir.
Okay. I'm back, everybody. That's right. How much time do we have, Henry?
We have about 10 seconds.
Okay, always let me know. Bring me in, all right?
Will do.
All right. Thanks so much.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. It's Monday, October 2nd, 2023. Let's talk about the government shutdown that was averted at least for 45 days here on WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. What do you think about this government shutdown that almost happened? And so much of it turned on Ukraine. Yeah, I mean, that was the rub. The rub was Ukraine. So, what do you think about that? Are we going to be there forever? How long are we going to be there? And why is this such a sticking point? I mean, the entire government was going to be shut down over that. That was something that, and we need to talk about that. You know, why Ukraine? What is going? What is it? What is it? What is it? And I want to hear your thoughts. I want you to call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. Everybody like and share the show, like and share the show, like and share the show. Let's talk about this government shutdown that has been averted for 45 days, just before Thanksgiving, you know, because this will be revisited. But I was struck as I watched Washington Journal on Saturday morning. You know, that's the C-SPAN show, and they open up the phone lines for the first hour, and they let the just speak, you know, about interesting hearing so many Americans from all over the country talk about Ukraine and they had questions about it. They said, wait a minute, we need help. You had some people here and there who said, well, we've got to continue to fund it. Didn't quite know why, but you know, we got to fight Putin. Okay. So I want to hear from you. What your thoughts are. I want you to call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. And let's talk about it, everybody. Let's get to these headlines. Congress reached a last-minute deal, which we're about to talk about, to avoid a government shutdown with hours to spare on Saturday. The House and the Senate passed a stopgap spending measure to keep the government open through mid-November. Funding for Ukraine was stripped from the bill, reflecting some Republicans' hardening opposition to helping Ukraine in its war against Russia. And now House Speaker Kevin McCarthy's seat is at risk. He is facing calls for his removal for passing the bill with Democratic support. Donald Trump's fraud trial in New York starts today. New York Attorney General Letitia James alleges that former President Trump and his company inflated the values of its assets to defraud lenders and insurance companies. The former president is facing more than $250 million in fines. The Supreme Court's next term begins this morning. Gun regulations, voting rights, social media companies and restrictions, and political posts in this political season. Those issues and so many more are at stake here. Public approval of the justices remains at at historically low levels. So we're going to see if they're going to deal with ethics in this term. California Governor Gavin Newsom named Senator Dianne Feinstein's replacement, LaFonza Butler. She is the president of Emily's List, one of the most prominent persons in the labor movement in the United States. First Black woman who will be openly gay, who will be serving in the U.S. Senate. And we will see how this is going to refocus California politics, because indeed, a person who's in contention, who's running to fill that seat, is Barbara Lee. And a lot of people were pushing for her. A lot of progressives were. So we're going to see. But congratulations to Senator-select LaFonza Butler. In Chicago, we're going to have a high of 78 degrees, maybe in the 80s. It's a very, very warm period that we're living through. Minneapolis, St. Paul, you set a record yesterday. 92 degrees was the high. We'll have a high of 83 degrees today, at least. Cloudy. Major League Baseball wrapped up the regular season yesterday. The Rockies 3, the Twins 2, the Brewers 4. They shut out the Cubs, who didn't even score. The Padres 2, the White Sox 1. In the NFL, the Vikings 21, the Panthers 13, and the Bears broke my heart. The Broncos 31, the Bears 28. In the WNBA, they too wrapped up their playoff season. So now we're at the championships. It will be the Las Vegas Aces versus the New York Liberty. The Liberty bested the Sun in their series 87-84 this weekend, and the Aces 64-61 over the Wings. And those are the headlines. So what about this government shutdown that was averted? What do you make of it? Call us at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. I want to know what your thoughts are. Do you think that we're now going to have a discussion about Ukraine? It seems that Americans want to do that. Because this deal pivoted on whether or not the U.S. government was going to continue to fund Ukraine. This war against Russia. What do you think about that? Call me at 773-763-9278. Of course, we have Bryce Green from Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting, Dr. David Gibbs, historian from the University of Arizona, and social scientist Dwight McKee. Let's start with you, Bryce Green. I know you got to go to class today. What do you make of the fact that, we almost shut the government down on funding for Ukraine? That sounds like a bit of an oversimplification, but that was the real fight. That was a real fight, Bryce Green.
Oh, right. I think this situation highlights the importance of, what's widely recognized and understood as the U.S. proxy war in Ukraine with Russia. This war has been, what the Washington Post columnist David Ignatius described as a strategic windfall for NATO, and provoking this war by refusing to negotiate about weapons placements and NATO expansion. Well, by provoking that, the U.S. and its allies have generated a whole new pro-NATO consensus in Europe. It's made a propaganda victory for them because they're able to cast Putin as the aggressor while ignoring, which is true, Putin is the aggressor, but they're ignoring their own role in bringing these situations about. And so the U.S. goal for quite some time has been to fuel this war, to reject any chance for negotiation, and to increase the flow of military equipment, troop training, intelligence support, increase all that support for Ukraine while sort of ignoring the larger risk that comes from being so militarily engaged with a hostile global superpower. Russia is a nuclear power, and both sides have constantly alluded to the dangers of an escalation of the conflict that could lead to nuclear war. But the U.S. especially has been hell-bent on escalating the conflict, pushing against what Russia considers to be red lines. They said that they weren't going to send tanks, and they sent tanks. They said they weren't going to send long-range missiles, and they sent long-range missiles. They said they weren't going to send F-16s, and they sent F-16s. But the question is, when does it end? When will Washington actually accept a stance about negotiation? That's an open question, but the endless flow of aid to this country indicates that the powers that be are pretty intent on keeping this proxy war going. The Republican dissent against this is interesting, especially considering the traditionally hawkish stance of the Republican Party. And it should be understood that the American public is, the polls show a massive decline in the support for sending aid to Ukraine. In fact, some polls indicate that majorities actually oppose sending more aid to Ukraine. The only people who are responsive to this are some of the more fringe members of the Republican Party. This is pretty surprising, not because those members are, especially intelligent or good-natured or well-intentioned, but the fact that they're the only people in the Congress who are talking about this, who are criticizing this policy of endless escalation. Traditionally you would expect like the Democratic Party or other progressive members of Congress to be against fueling this war and be actively calling for negotiations, but you don't see that. All you see is, support Ukraine, more war, and the fringe dissent from the Republican Party is only dissent insofar as they think that we should be focusing more on China. So it's really just a hawkish consensus all about the U.S. power establishment, and the Republican dissent on Ukraine is really more of a tactical rather than a strategic disagreement on that front.
Call us at 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. And to be fair, the progressives held the line on cuts to WIC and SNAP and these food assistance programs. The deal that was cut in the spring was this. Those programs were not to be cut, particularly given the fact that we are dealing in highly inflationary times. And they were going to make those cuts anyway, draconian cuts, where people were just not going to get any more food and we're going to get less food. Just unbelievable. But it's striking that they are, Dr. Gibbs, really, really holding the line on Ukraine. Do you think that this is going to open a broader discussion? I mean, and why the Republicans, why are they taking this position? Because it seems like this is a bit of a bizarro world in which I don't know if they're fighting for peace, but they certainly are fighting for us not to fund this war anymore.
What you're seeing is a erosion of public support. As Bryce Green just noted, that the CNN poll showed, I believe 55% of the public now does not support continuing support for Ukraine. This is a reversal, and it reflects a historical tradition in the United States. The public typically does back the president on short wars, but then loses patience over time. This happened with Vietnam. This happened with Korea. It's happening now. It happened with the war on terror also. And it's going to damage Biden's popularity, I suspect, with the public. I think it will very much become a campaign issue, even though nobody wants to say that as of yet. This is a worldwide trend, by the way. Poland was one of the most enthusiastically pro-Ukrainian countries in the world, and they recently announced they will give no more military aid to Ukraine. They seem to have soured on the idea, and I think the government is reflecting public trends and the fact that there's an election coming up in Poland. Slovakia, but again, one of the most hawkish countries in Europe, and they just elected a new prime minister who said he'll give no more aid to Ukraine. I think what you're seeing is a split between the foreign policy establishment and the media and the Biden administration on the one hand and the public on the other. The first are very enthusiastic about prosecuting the war, no matter how long it takes, no matter how much it costs the public. And the public is now turned against the war in the United States and at least in some European countries. And, I think that's a real danger to the hawkish side of the aisle is the public, and the fact that the public in the end will have its say. And I think there's a lot of worry about that in official circles, that the public could eventually cut off support for this war. And the recent showdown in the Congress was one more iteration of this. The fact that, they've removed aid to Ukraine from the existing budget. That'll be changed, I'm sure. But the fact that they did it even temporarily, I think is indicative of a new trend here.
So, but what's driving this with the Republicans? Because this is not something that you typically see them do. I don't know if they're fighting for peace or if they're fighting against this war. What's happening here, Dr. Gibbs?
Well, do you want me to answer it, or
yes.
What are the other panelists? Okay. Well, I think that you are definitely seeing a historic reversal here, in that the less hawkish element in the political system is the Republican Party, and that's a massive historical shift. Part of it does indeed reflect, as was noted, the fact that many of these people in the Republican Party are saying we shouldn't be fighting Russia, we should be fighting China. And there's no doubt that's part of it. Another one, of course, is just partisanship. This is Biden's war, so they don't like them on that account. But I think there is nevertheless an element in the Republican Party, a small one, particularly in the libertarian side of the Republican Party, that I think is more authentically anti-war. A site I read every day, the best anti-war site there is called antiwar.com. It's mostly a libertarian site. It has a few adherents in Congress, like Thomas Massey of Kentucky, who I think are much more authentically anti-war, not just anti-war with Russia. Let me say I don't like libertarianism. They're the essence of neoliberalism. They're the essence of wealth concentration. There are all sorts of very bad things about libertarianism. So this isn't as if I'm endorsing their ideology. I'm not. I'm just noting the fact that they've become the most anti-war element in the country. What you've also seen is an absolute and near complete collapse of the anti-war left. Well, I don't want to say complete. Cornel West, for example, is clearly a man of the left. He's running on an anti-war platform. But for the most part, some of those hawkish people in the country are people who identify with the political left. That's, again, a remarkable political shift. Now, I used to say that we're in the middle of a political realignment. I think that's we've had the political realignment. We've had it already. And the Democratic Party and the political left are much more hawkish than anyone else at this point in time.
Dwight McKee, your thoughts?
Well, you have to understand that they've been fighting this war since Napoleon. Is that during the Crimean Wars, Britain and France and Turkey was trying to separate Ukraine from Crimea, and this war is it's almost 200 years old now, because it's some of the most important and valuable land in Europe, and the agriculture of it, and tied into the oil and the Black Sea, and it's just a valuable piece of property. And so the European empires have been trying to go in and get it. They've been trying to take it from Russia, or keep it from Russia, who now are allied with the Chinese. This is an old war that keeps getting revisited and revisited and revisited. Napoleon III spiked Tsar Nicholas about the same land, and they turned Nicholas into the new Putin, the Putin of his time. And so I'm not surprised. This war, you have to understand, is more European driven. We are not at risk with Russia having arms. It is the European countries, it is the NATO countries that are trying to lock Russia in and are forcing this issue, and who keep expanding into the territories that surround Russia. They draw us in because, again, we want to be the head of the empire. And then we have these little nation states who have come from Europe, who still have a vested interest in what's happening in Europe. And so they draw us into these European skirmishes. But the fact of the matter, this is really more about the European countries than it is about us. We've just kind of co-signed, and it's just an opportunity to lock ourselves into it.
Bryce Green, I have a couple of minutes before you go, about 3 before you go. Why don't you, some people are calling you a Putin apologist. I mean, TJ said, hey, here we go again. Bryce Green is blaming NATO protection for Russia's genocide on Ukraine. We're demonizing Putin. He said, yeah, we're demonizing Putin. Yep. The U.S. and NATO wanted a proxy war with Russia. Why doesn't Bryce go to Moscow and negotiate with Putin if he's such an authority on Ukraine? The thing is, we don't want to negotiate with him. Congressman Jackson raised that idea, just asked a simple question in a meeting with his colleagues, and you would have thought that he committed sacrilege. Bryce Green.
Well, I hear this argument all the time that these are talking points of what's supposed to be the official enemy. But I mean, you don't have to say that Bryce is claiming that NATO expansion led to this. I mean, the head of NATO, Jens Stoltenberg, has said those exact words. He said that Putin was asking about a draft treaty that would limit Ukraine expansion or NATO expansion into Ukraine, and the NATO refused to negotiate on it. And according to Stoltenberg, that's why he invaded. I mean, they just say it. And that is a result of U.S. policy. And we know that they understood that this policy would lead to war. And so to say that the U.S. is not to blame here, at least in part, is just factually inaccurate. I think it's based on a faulty understanding of history and what led up to the war.
So what should we be looking for moving forward? We've got 45 days. It seems that the Republican caucus, they keep saying it's about 5 or 6 people. No, it's actually grown to about 91 people. It seems like they are digging in their heels, Bryce Green. The last 90 seconds belong to you.
Oh, well, we'll see what's happening. One interesting note about this Ukraine funding is that it doesn't actually affect what's actually going on in Ukraine right now. The Pentagon decided, as this shutdown loomed earlier a couple of weeks ago, that they would exempt Ukraine operations from any government shutdown. So they classified Ukraine, the weapons transfers and all the related logistics, they classified that as essential government services that are immune to a government shutdown. So the problem goes way deeper than exactly what members of Congress are considering putting in the budget bill. But it is good to see that there is opposition to Ukraine. And the important thing is to, keep that momentum up. Make sure that other people understand that this is a position that's worth taking. Make sure people understand the history about why the U.S. doesn't want to negotiate, and make sure that we can be able to pressure our elected representatives to take a more humane position and a more sober and a more realistic position about the nature of the war.
What do you think, everybody? Call us at 773-763-9278. The government is going to shut down on this issue. Let's talk about it on the Santita Jackson Show. WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. Back in just a minute. TJ said, that's a lie, Bryce. There was no agreement not to expand NATO. Yeah, there was, actually. There was. I mean, would you care to...
Well, that's not even what I'm talking about. There was an agreement, but B, that's what I'm referring to. What I'm referring to is a talk between, or a treaty between Putin and NATO that was offered in December of 2021. Putin said that NATO expansion was his key issue. Jens Stoltenberg understood that. NATO understood that. And they still said, no, we're not going to do anything about that. And we're going to continue to expand. We're going to put missiles on your border. And according to Stoltenberg, he said that's why Putin invaded. I mean, if you don't agree, you can take it up with NATO, but they say it.
Okay. I mean, that really is it. I'm just trying to figure out what the investment that so many people have in it. I don't understand it. And I need you all to help me to understand the investment that so many of us have in this. And certainly, I don't want to see anyone run over. No, I don't. That having been said, there's something else going on here. Can't quite figure it out. It's above my pay grade for sure. But I want to thank you.
Well, that's why I'm saying. That's why I was saying, Santita, is that they've been trying to get that land for 200 years. The land is extraordinarily valuable. It's off the Black Sea, off the White Sea. It is more agricultural value than any land in Europe. There's oil in the land. It's the land that feeds Africa. And whoever controls that land really controls that part of the empire. And so this is not new. That's why I say France and England and Turkey fought over that land 150 years ago. The Crimean War was about who's going to control that land. Crimea and the Ukraine. And so this is just an extension of those empires who are fighting to control those lands. Now the pretext is communism. Back then the pretext was Christianity and Islam. But it is really all about who's going to control that land. It's tremendous
2 minutes.
valuable land.
Well, let's talk about that, everybody. I want you to call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. And I mean, and where do we go from here? That is my question. Because the government almost shut down over this issue. The Republicans are digging in their heels on this, which is interesting. And I'm just wondering, where are we going with this? I mean, are you comfortable giving this money that Tim Scott said is a loan, whatever it is? I tell you what, the people of Lahaina are not getting anything. They got $700 per family. That's it. That's it. I mean, Dr. Gibbs, I mean, just that is so profoundly insulting. I mean, these people are already removed from their land. They call themselves, many of them call themselves forced Americans.
Well, that's one of the things I'm sure that's alienating the public from the war is the realization that this is indeed coming out of people's pockets and out of the pockets of people like those in the island of Maui who've gotten, as you noted, very little compensation for what happened to them. And I think that, that realization that
Back in 30.
we are buying guns instead of butter is going to be much more difficult for the government to overcome and to explain. Especially because my sense is that I don't see U.S. military or the NATO military has any kind of strategy here. I think the original strategy was to destroy Russia with sanctions, and after that failed, then they tried the counteroffensive, which really never had any chance of working.
Stand by.
And so I don't think they really have any kind of plan B here.
Change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
To a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, talking with Dr. David Gibbs, historian from the University of Arizona, and Dwight McKee, social scientist here in Chicago, the dean of the Ma'afa Redemption Project. And we just spoke with Bryce Green. I want to hear from you. What are your thoughts about this government shutdown and the fact that it seems that Ukraine and the funding of that war was at the center of this? This has been the sticking point that the Republicans demanded, take funding from this war out of this bill. And then we can talk. They didn't want to talk about anything else. They were willing to shut the government down over this, which I found to be positively fascinating. And I want to know what your thoughts are. Call me at 773-763-9278. TJ rigorously disagrees with you and Dwight. And Chaparral says, all I know is the money spent for this war could have gone to reduce student loan debt. Michelle Torres says Ukraine is more important to the U.S., Congress, and this administration than any domestic issue we face. Ukraine funding is not affected by a shutdown. This is the priority. What? Well, that's what it appears to be that way, Dr. Gibbs.
Well, that's always been the case, that ever since 1945, an absolute priority has always been given to fighting wars, preparing for wars. Whenever hears education or healthcare or emergency relief spoken of and with that kind of urgency, those are expendable things. It's not a big deal if we got healthcare, let's say, for the poor. It's not a big deal, if we don't address the issue of student loans. We'll do it if we can, but if we can't, such is life. No one ever talks about making war in that fashion. This is sort of an absolute priority. And these wars are not defensive wars. The U.S. has no vital interest in Ukraine. I think the vital interest here, as noted that by Dwight McGee, that there is economic interest in this, including access to a very rich area of the world in terms of agriculture. But I think an even bigger one is the military-industrial complex in the United States. And we can define that very broadly in terms of not just the industries that make weapons, but also the think tanks, the media companies, Academics were heavily funded by the military-industrial complex. It's a really large complex with a lot of backing that's all tied together by money. And, they've been doing very well from this war. That can't be denied. It can't be denied that's at least one factor in what's going on here. It's not the only factor. I think the tone of moral self-righteousness as a kind of, gives a certain push to the war. It also helps to shut down discussion, but certainly there are American vested interests. One thing that is not at stake is American security. In fact, the war decreases U.S. security because now we have to worry about nuclear war. There's a very real risk of nuclear war here. But there's nothing in this war that enhances American security. Quite the contrary. Anybody who claims, this is American security is at stake is simply not being honest, I would say.
Dwight McKee, your thoughts?
Yeah, that's what I was saying. I said we are not have any an extension of the geographical extension of Europe, and that we have no proximity to Russia or China. I mean, they are oceans away from us. The only ones that have proximity to Russia is the European countries. And that they are the ones I was saying that's been fighting over the Crimea for 150 years and who's going to control that part of the land and how to maintain their empires. The French countries, France, they really live off prerogatives of the African countries in their colonies, Haiti, Algiers. Their standard of living is based on them being able to exploit the minerals in Africa, in the country, their colonies in Africa. Crimea is part of who feeds Africa. And so who has control over in Ukraine. Whoever has control of Ukraine has control over the food that goes into Africa. And so it's very important for France to be able to control that, to be able to maintain maximum control over the colonies in Africa so they can maintain their standards of living. England, same situation. Is a lot of their wealth comes from the Commonwealth. And much of those African countries that are part of the British Empire lives off prerogatives of the food that comes out of the Ukraine. So it's very important for them to have control of that and that food stuff not be nationalized or Russia has control of it to be communized,
socialized.
Become communist, socialized. It is very important for them to maintain that empire which feeds them because they themselves don't have the natural resources that they need to control the world. They have to do it by colonization. And so when I talk about this is really basically a European war that we have been bought into. Our interest in it is that it's really a pretext to be able to take the national budget and feed our military-industrial complex and give them, their fortune in all of this. But it's not because we are directly at risk. It's because they need a reason and excuse to keep taking 60% of the budget and putting it in their coffers. And so they really impose themselves into a situation that has nothing directly to do with us, that is at no risk to us. It will be, as Bryce has said, a risk to us because at some point it become nuclear. When back in the day of Napoleon, it was horses and swords. So the technology has made it more dangerous for us, but they are not our natural enemies.
Michelle Torres says we're funding Ukraine pensions. their first responders, their entire war operation. We gave Maui families $700. Priorities, right? Yep. Let me go to, is it Char? I want to pronounce your name correctly. Char or Shar?
That's right. Hi, how are you, Santita?
How are
This
you?
is Charmaine.
Hey, Charmaine, how you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. I just wanted to comment on what's going on in regards to this war.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's ironic because historically, from what I understand, the Democrats were not the warmongers. They were more so the peacemakers. And this situation, it just seems like there's a parallel situation and a parallel narrative that I'm seeing on the side of Democrats. They continue to have these chest beating contests against the Republicans when it comes to virtue signaling and doing things in the guise of being humane. But I don't understand how you could go to war with anyone. First of all, war is so antiquated. It's old. And have 350,000 men of any complexion die and feel like there's some humanity that can be found in that. And this appears to be like this is a never-ending war. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't appear to be any solutions that are coming about. Now, you know, one of the things that people are talking about is, ironically, a couple of years before this broke out, or months almost before this broke out, there was a different narrative where they were calling Zelensky a Nazi. Then all of a sudden, when it was time to go to war, when it was time to really, what I believe the U.S. is trying to do is position themselves so that they're on Ukraine soil, so that they can put bases on Ukraine soil. And
how do you feel about that?
In America, well, see, that I have an issue with that, because come on now, would you want your enemy to come next door and set up camp? It's like if Russia
that would be a no.
Came to exactly. So if Russia came to Alaska and set up camp and felt like it was okay to instigate a war between Alaska and the United States so that they can set up camp, spy, and do what have, we would be having a fit behind this. But I want to make one more point. It's just so ironic how all of the needs of the American people are being ignored. There's nothing is being met. We're not talking about education, the education system anymore. We're not talking about any type of social programs anymore. Nothing to execute any type of remedy to the issues that we're having in this country. Homelessness, what have you.
But Char,
what's going on in Maui?
Char, hold on. Char, hold on. Like, what's happening? But you know, that was Dr. King's argument 60 years ago about Vietnam, remember? I mean, we might not remember it, but he said you can't do both. You know, the Bible tells you a double-minded man is unstable in all of his ways. You can't wage war and peace at the same time. It doesn't work.
It does not work. And, you know, and I don't know if we realize that at this point, it's almost as if they're raising war against the American citizen, because these are our tax dollars. The same thing that's happening on the micro is on the macro is happening on the micro. If you look right here in Chicago, in our very beloved city, they are continuing to fund what's going on in Venezuela and ignoring every need for the tax-paying citizens in Chicago. There's just nothing that seems to be being. It just seems as if anything that has to do with fixing anything domestically, it all goes on the backboard burner in the name of being humane and virtue signaling. I don't know how you continue to fund the war, and like everybody's saying, $700 to those people in Maui. This is wicked. This is wicked. And wars are always about money and contracts and who gets the kickback. It has nothing to do with being humane. You can't do both. There's an oxymoron in itself.
Dwight, you want to respond?
Vietnam is a good example. Yeah, I do. And she makes some excellent points. And Vietnam is a good example. Vietnam was about French colonialism. That wasn't an American issue. The French had colonized Vietnam and was trying to maintain them as a colony. But America saw it as a pretext to take its resources and invest it into the military-industrial complex. So they just imposed themselves in that war, and so that they could then justify taking that part of the economy and recycling it from the Great Society into the military-industrial complex. And if you understand how this thing works, that's what happens every generation. Is America finds the military-industrial complex finds a pretext to impose itself in a war that has nothing directly to do with us, but they prosper from it. Not because they win the war, or because they so much invade the territory and take the resources out of that, is that they prosper because they use the United States budget to enrich itself. And they have no value in taking the lives of our children to do that.
Dwight?
And then they hypnotize us.
No. I mean, I'm hearing you. I want to. They hypnotize us because I wanted to get a couple other callers in. But you were saying they hypnotize us too. No, too.
They hypnotize us by imposing some label, communists or Vietnam groups or whatever. They demonize the opposition, draw the Americans in who don't have any sense of history or reality about what's going on, and they support something that they really don't, for the most part, don't even understand.
And then a generation later, if you're trying to cut business deals with them. Let me go to Audra.
Yeah.
Shar. Girl, keep thinking, and thank you for calling. I mean, I'm just asking, I'm just trying to raise the question here. I got Audra. Audra, what's on your mind today? Thank you so much for calling in.
Hi, Santita. I want to start with saying I respect you so much. I enjoy your show very much. I felt I had to call. I wish someone smarter than me, better informed, could call.
Oh, get out of here, girl.
I am a person.
You are brilliant.
No, for real.
You,
but I will tell
you
you
have opinions and they matter. Go on and say what you need to say.
Well, I'm emotional, but I am not hypnotized, Santita. I am a child of refugees from the Soviet Union. So communism means something to me. It's not a buzzword. Millions died under Stalin, starving Ukrainian peasants, sending people to Siberia. He is truly the equivalent of Hitler. And Putin is his, whatever, godchild. It is his, he's mentored, by Stalin. I worry. I don't know the answers. We need to send money to Maui. We need to fix things in Chicago. But not only did Putin invade a sovereign nation, he's trying to colonize Ukraine, take children to Russia, take them away from their parents. But I do feel it's not just a European problem. I feel, from my understanding, Putin's henchmen have invaded cyberspace. There's been cyber warfare. And I feel like a lot of Trumpism, a lot of all that stuff that's happened over the past few years is because of Russian interference in, the internet, in our elections.
But Audra,
so I'm sorry I'm not being so eloquent, but I just feel passionate about it.
See right there, I want to engage you because I hear you. That having been said, the thing is, cyber warfare is something that we all do. And cyber spying, that's Russia does not occupy that space exclusively. Now, and that having been said, and I can certainly understand your ancestral tie to this particular fight. I've got ancestral ties to different fights myself, and I get it. That having been said, I also have an ancestral tie to the Second World War because both of my grandparents were veterans. My grandfather, my maternal grandfather is buried at Arlington with my grandmother now. The Azov Battalion, they're Nazis. But we're lifting them up. You saw what happened in Canada a week and a half ago. And I have to tell you, it is profoundly offensive to me. Profoundly offensive.
Absolutely.
For us to be lifting up Nazis in Ukraine, because that is who's running their military, a crucial part of their military. And it angers me. It's offensive to me. It's offensive.
I am afraid, though, that a lot of that is Russian propaganda.
No, it's
as
not.
well.
No, it's not propaganda because
Just
because that has been widely reported for years who the Azov Battalion are. That is a fact. That's who they are.
Yes, but not every Ukrainian. Obviously, they want their democracy, and they're not Nazis. I'm just afraid if it's painted with a broad brush.
I'm not saying. I'm not painting with a broad brush. Stay with me, Audra, because I'm not trying to. I want to engage you here, because I also, as a Black person, saw how Africans were treated when they were trying to get out of there when this conflict started.
Yes, disgusting. Okay. I agree.
It was. I mean, all this is disgusting, and lifting up Nazis is disgusting. They're supposed to be the enemies, right? Audra, stay there. Audra, stay there. Stay there, Audra. Okay, because I think what you're saying is very important. Okay.
I appreciate your airtime.
Oh, of course, it's your airtime. Dwight, you want to say, and Dr. Gibbs, you want to say something to Audra, who has an ancestral tie? I get it.
If I do, yes, I do. Belgium killed 1 million Africans in the Congo. We didn't declare war on Belgium. I mean, there is a selective outrage when when some countries are genocidal, as opposed when other countries are genocidal. And I don't support what Russia has done to Ukrainians, even though Ukraine can be argued to have been part of Russia, and they could have been fighting for their own country. That's a different argument. But yet, they never talk, and they talk about what Hitler did, the Nazis, and the Holocaust, but they never talked about what Leopold did to the Congo. And they never declared war on Belgium. And the NATO countries have been as oppressive and as racist and genocidal in Africa and South America as Germany ever was and Russia ever was.
Yes.
But we don't declare war on them. In fact, we ally with them and support them and sign off on that, as we did in South Africa with those who was oppressive to the South Africans for 100 years.
Audra, could you stay with me?
We didn't sanction them.
Audra, could you stay with me for a minute? Could you? Because I wanted to bring on Howard. No, I don't want you to go.
Could I just respond to that?
Absolutely. Or? Yes, because I've just got tight time and I wanted to bring Howard on.
Just that what happened in the Congo is it's beyond abhorrent. So I agree with you. Because America does not have a moral high ground, that's when it gets complicated. Because absolutely, and I understand African American problems in the United States are so deep and not worked on enough. So I hear you completely. I don't have any. You're correct.
But and so this is not. We're not getting into poking in each other's faces here. I'm glad that you called in, Audra, because I think that we need to hear all sides. I want this to be a global discussion. That's the only way that we as Americans are going to get from where we are to where we need to be. Would you not agree with that?
Agreed.
So I mean,
agreed. Yes, we need to talk to each other, and I feel like the African American cause in America is my cause, even though I'm Lithuanian American. I live here, and so I want to fight for African Americans. So I totally agree.
Because we're all Americans. So your cause is mine. Yes. Mine is yours. We're brothers and sisters, whether we like it or not. let me go to Howard. I mean, that's what we are. But stay right there, Audra, because I want you to be able to engage with Dr. Gibbs, because I think that what you're saying is very important. Okay, Howard, sweetheart, I got about a couple of minutes left, and I'm going to give them to you, Howard.
Okay, a couple of points. First of all, the United States is right across the Bering Strait from Russia, so we're plenty close.
Mm-hmm.
Secondly, as far as I'm concerned, those who do not support the war are the spiritual heirs of Neville Chamberlain. Also, in terms of the
saying of being appeasers,
you should also bear in mind what's being done to the Central African Republic by Russia right now. That should be a greater concern to you.
I think it should be a great concern to everybody. But on the continent of Africa, just to be clear, Howard, the reason Africa did not sign on this particular conflict is because Russia did not colonize them, unlike Western Europe. They have a completely different relationship with Africa and the revolutions. They have a completely different relationship with the revolutions in South and Central America and the Caribbean. So people of color have a very different relationship with Russia. And I want you to be real clear on that. That's why I said at the beginning, wait a minute, watch it, everybody, watch yourself. Stay right there, Howard, because I want to engage you. Everybody, stay right here on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. We're going to go into this when we go off air, but we'll still be talking with Audra and with Howard because I think it's important. Audra, you still there, Audra, my sister? I hope she's still there. Well, and Howard, hope you stay there because Audra, call back in. Call back in. Call back in. Call back in, Audra, or send me a direct message and let me get your number. We will call you. But call back in, Audra. Audra, call back in. Just stay right there because I want to continue to engage you. I'm not in control of the board. If I were, you'd still be there. And to be fair, my board operator is trying to run a couple of other stations, about 2 or 3 other stations at the same time. So stay right there because we didn't cut you off because I still want to talk with you, Audra, and I want to engage you, Howard, because I think it's important for us to have all of these points of view represented here. And the only way we're going to resolve this is to listen to everybody respectfully and to understand all of the different perspectives that we have here. But we need to have Dr. David Gibbs, not just my story, you need to have history. We need to understand what actually happened here and how we got into this conflict, how we got here. Now we need to talk to Putin. Everybody needs to be talking to each other. The African nations, Indian nations, Lula down in Brazil, they have come up with a peace solution. That's what we need. No one else needs to die. Some estimates say that 500,000 Ukrainians have been killed. That does not have to happen. I don't care what color they are. That doesn't matter to me. They're human beings. They're God's children, just like you and me. Study war no more. Beat your swords into plowshares. That's what we need to do. You do best what you do most. If you want a war, if you war all the time, that's what you do. Kill people. Well, you know what? I'm a freedom fighter, and I believe in saving people. I'm pro-life all the way. I love you, everybody. Stay right here on the Santita Jackson Show, and let's talk with Audra. I want you to call back. I'm going to get you back on, okay, Audra? Call right now. 773-76. You back, Audra?
Yes, I'm back.
All right,
Santita.
sweetie, stay right there, okay? All right. Love you, everybody. See you tomorrow on the Santita Jackson Show. Dr. Gibbs, I wanted you to respond to Audra.
Sure.
Okay, because Audra, I did promise you. Okay.
Yeah. I think that it's important to remember that we're basically in a NATO bubble, which sees this conflict in a very different way from most of the world. In the first place, the NATO bubble, and I'm referring here to the United States, NATO, and maybe a few Asian allies like Japan, do see this the way that some of our callers have said it, that this is unprovoked aggression and it's Russia's a worldwide threat and so on. That's only about 15% of the world really sees it that way. For what it's worth, I was in the Peace Corps in Niger in West Africa a long time ago, and some of my Peace Corps buddies still maintain ties there. And my understanding from them is the people of Niger supported this coup, and they view Russia much more favorably than they view France or the United States. I mean, mostly France. The Prigozhin Wagner group, they are thugs, but they see the French troops as thugs too.
And so do the Africans. Wait. And so do the Africans. Let's keep it 100. Okay.
Right. Well, I was referring to the people of Niger, but yeah, more broadly, I think in Africa, Russia mostly has a positive reputation on the whole. And to the extent, again, that their mercenaries are thugs, they see the other side as thugs too. And it's good to have balance in the types of thugs you get support from. And so I think that, it's important to bear that in mind. And it's also important to bear in mind that Russian military spending as a percentage of their, it was 8% of what the United States spends. It was maybe 1/12 of what the United States spends. And if you throw in NATO, then maybe 1/20th. So we're talking about a very, very small amount of military spending. If they don't have anything close to what they would need to attack Europe or something like that, nor do they have any intention to. There isn't any evidence they have any intention of attacking Western Europe. There's nothing in the record to suggest that. So I think this is largely just NATO propaganda, frankly. I mean, of course, Russia was wrong to invade Ukraine, but we should not forget that NATO has openly acknowledged that they provoked this invasion. I mean, Jens Stoltenberg, as Bryce Green noted before, has acknowledged that was what caused the war. And yeah, Russia shouldn't have taken the bait, but the provocation should not have been made either. That was a very cynical, amoral thing to do. And so I think what we're at now is, where do we go from here? And I think the fact is, we're seeing on the ground is Russia is almost certainly going to win this war if it continues. It may take them several years, but all the evidence is they're in a position to win this war on the ground. And short of nuclear war, I don't think there's anything NATO can do about it. And what we need to do is end it as soon as possible. And the only way to do that is negotiations. We can't have negotiations, or everybody who calls for negotiations is instantly called a Putin puppet or an appeaser. The only alternative to negotiations is Ukraine just flat out losing this war, because that's where we're headed with this. Russia's much better positioned to win than NATO is in this particular case. Ukraine just does not have the manpower to sustain this. So I think negotiations are essential, and we really need a change of attitude in political climate to achieve that. And so I just don't think this kind of seeing it in black and white terms is very healthy at this point.
Audra?
Yeah, I guess I'm just a bit shocked that it's kind of a false equivalency to say, well, Putin has thugs, but the other side has thugs. I don't believe it was provoked by NATO. I think Putin was looking for an opportunity to have the lands of the Soviet Union back, to control that breadbasket that is Ukraine. And, I can't speak to how African nations view Russia, but my fear would be, of course, he's going to be friendly when he needs them, but I would be afraid of what would happen, once the handshake is made. As far as winning the war, I do believe Ukraine will win because they are desperate not to be put back in a cage. And I believe what's happening in Russia is, Russians don't want to fight this war either because they don't need it. I guess I have to just go on the moral high ground. And I think that they want their land, their freedom, and they just will not go back into a gulag. And so I'm not a warmonger. I hate to even find myself in this position, but I just think, well, what would I do if they came into?
Audra,
but I feel sometimes I feel that too. But if someone invaded my home and my children, and what would I do? So it's a horrible position to be in.
But Audra, let's back up.
Yeah.
When you were both old enough to remember, you had West Germany, you had East Germany, right? So when the deal was cut, of course, you still had the USSR who were breaking up. And we helped to provoke that, but they broke up. The deal that was cut and correct me if I'm incorrect, Dr. Gibbs, the deal that was cut, just broadly speaking, okay, you reunite East and West Germany, but NATO should not expand eastward toward Russia because we feel threatened. And so that, right? Am I wrong?
That's exactly right. We now have a large set of declassified documents on this. They've declassified the documents. You can find them on the web at George Washington University. And what they show unambiguously is there was an agreement by the United States never to expand NATO to the east. They can deny it if they want, but it's clear as day in the documents. And, the United States just brazenly violated that agreement.
The next day.
So Russia
the day after the unification occurred, we reneged on the agreement. And just before you continue, I can speak to you about Africa. I've been going there since I was 7. And when it was illegal to even mention the ANC, that leadership would stay in my home, Audra. Okay. So, and I remember meeting Castro when I was 14, and he found me in the crowd because he heard that Jesse Jackson's daughter was there, and he wanted to. Oh wow! He wanted to hug the daughter of the freedom fighter, and this was in 1978. Okay, and then the other members of the ANC, Mr. Tombo, all these people, they were like, Jesse's daughter is here. Because they used to stay in my home. Okay. And so I got a chance to know Africa and African leaders on the, I mean, just these people that we read about are people I was privileged to know. So their relationship, I can tell you on authority. And I say this because I feel an obligation. I'm not condescending when I do this, Audra. I'm just trying to share with you what,
No.
what I've lived and what I've seen.
No,
Their
of course.
relationship with
Yeah.
Russia has been very, very different because Russia dealt with them very differently before it was convenient to do so. Remember, they lost tens of millions of people in the Second World War. And my grandfather would tell me the last in-person conversation I had with Charles Henry Jackson, my granddaddy, was about the atrocities of the Second World War and how blacks were sent into the concentration camps. Because if you sent the white soldiers in, they would have thought the survivors would have thought they were Nazis. But they also sent blacks into those concentration camps because they were laden with explosives. So a lot of black soldiers were killed trying to go save the survivors, right?
Yes.
So I'm just trying to give you, just let you know, I mean, MI6 and the CIA are the ones who captured Mandela and imprisoned him. It was the Russians who fought and agitated with the other freedom fighters to get him out. And so when you would meet these freedom fighters, and when you see them, they all greet each other, and they greet each other in love and appreciation because Russia was quite on the opposite side of where the Western powers have been, the United States and Western Europe, all of them. So, it's just, I just wanted to share that with you so that you could have that information.
I appreciate it. Listen, Santita, I'm going to, continue to research this, so I really appreciate it. I want to keep talking, but I have to get to work, so I hope I can call in again. But I thank you so much, and you've given me, I want to definitely look that up as well.
Audra, would you call in again? I'm deeply appreciative of the fact that you've given that even as you disagreed, you kept on listening, and I just hope that you think that even if we disagree, that we're fair.
Absolutely. And I just respect you and love you, Santita. So thank you so much.
Wait a minute, Audra. I love you, girl.
Yes. Oh, thank you. Okay. Have a great Monday.
I'm going to make that money, girl. There we go. That's what we have to do. Is Howard still there?
Yes.
Okay, Howard. I'm sorry. It's not that I was ignoring you, sweetie, but I had the feeling that she had to go, but she was accidentally dropped. But Howard, would you like to make your point so that Dr. Gibbs and Dwight McKee can respond to you?
Well, first of all, I think that you should bring Malcolm Nance back on. He probably does a better job at this than I am. Mm-hmm. But also,
I've reached out to him just so that you know. But I'll reach out to him again because when I was reaching out to him, I was unsettled. I didn't know he was going to Ukraine. And I was just concerned that he'd get back alive. But I'll reach out to Malcolm. I will do that, and I'll bring him back on, okay? I promise you that.
Also, bear in mind that Russia supposedly guaranteed the independence of Ukraine in an agreement whereby Ukraine turned in all the nuclear weapons that it had on it. Yet the Russians have violated that. So if you want to talk about sins of the past, then you can go all the way back to forever.
Yeah,
but the thing is,
Ukraine goes back and forth, right? Like unlike many other countries, they flip to the Russian side and they flip against the Russians. They do that all the time. That's their history.
Yeah, but 3.2 million of them were murdered by Russia, and they're certainly entitled to make their choices, and like I said, the Russians supposedly guaranteed the freedom of the Ukraine in exchange for those nuclear missiles, that they're violating that.
Well, let me let Dr. Gibbs respond and Dwight McKee. Dr. Gibbs?
Well, he's right. I mean, there was this thing called the Budapest Memorandum in 1994, which is part of the Non-Lugar Act of the United States. It was initiated by the United States. I should add, the Non-Lugar Act was one of the very few, in my view, really intelligent things that we did in the last 30 years that improved security. The whole idea was that several of the former Soviet states, including Ukraine, would give up their nuclear weapons, and the United States would finance the dismantlement. Russia would keep theirs because the U.S. refused to, have bilateral disarmament. But 3 nuclear states would be disarmed, including Ukraine. Russia agreed not to violate the independence or sovereignty of Ukraine in exchange, and the missiles were dismantled. In 1994, the Russians agreed to that. And there's no doubt the Russian invasion not only violated the Budapest Memorandum, it violated the UN Charter, it violated a whole series of agreements, and it deserves to be condemned on those grounds. But I think that does not change the fact that the U.S. provoked the invasion. There's no question about it. I mean, let's be very clear. The first violation was by the United States in terms of agreeing to not expand NATO and then brazenly violating it. So, this is a whole series of violations here. But the original sin, if you want, was the firm agreement that was made again and again and again and again by the United States, Britain, Germany, and France not to expand NATO and then brazenly violating it again and again and again. That preceded the Russian invasion by 30 years. I think that the chronology here has to be taken into account. I think another thing has to be taken into account is that the Russians did. Again, Putin's not a nice man, and we should not whitewash his record inside Russia. But the fact is that the Russians, under Putin and under Yeltsin, tried to negotiate negotiate an arrangement whereby NATO would not extend to Russia's borders. For 30 years, they tried to do that. And the U.S. just firmly refused to negotiate on any point at all of any significance. And that's one of the reasons we're having the war. There was also the issue of the Donbass region and the Russian-speaking areas of the Donbass region, which separated in 2014 from Ukraine. And Russia was negotiating with France and Germany the Minsk agreements, which was to give regional autonomy to the Donbass, and Ukraine refused to implement them. We now know, because the former leaders of France and Germany both have said that they were negotiating in bad faith. They never intended to implement these agreements. What they were trying to do is stall Russia to give Ukraine enough time to build up its army. And so, the implication is basically that they were playing Russia and they were negotiating in bad faith. Well, that destroys any credibility they have. It damages the possibility of future peace agreements. It went a long way towards provoking this war. So I think what has to take into account, there was a very bad record of honoring agreements, not just by the U.S., but also by France and Germany here. And the French and German leaders are frank about it. They've almost boasted about how they were negotiating in bad faith with Russia. All of that has to be taken into account in terms of examining the reasons for Russia's invasion. And I think I think outside of the NATO bubble, I think people understand this, but only in the NATO bubble is the propaganda so intense that there's very little of these facts are known.
Dwight McKee?
And don't forget that they overthrew the democratically elected Ukrainian government in order to get there. In order to retool that relationship. But again, I keep going back to
the government was taken over by a peaceful demonstrations constantly. It's the kind of thing that you've basically advocating for here in the United States, that they did it peacefully in Ukraine in the Orange Revolution.
That was orchestrated by the CIA, just for the record. And again, I'm glad you said what you said,
Howard,
is that France and Britain has been trying to get the Crimean, Ukraine since the Crimean War. This is not new. They've been plotting and planning on this for 200 years. That was a real war.
Freedom for themselves.
The Ottoman Empire.
Dr. Gibbs?
I'm listening.
Oh, okay. Excuse me, Howard?
Yes.
I wanted you to respond, and you were saying something, I thought.
Yes. That if you want, it's well known that Putin wants to reinstate the Soviet Union. So whatever else there is involved in that, that's his prime driver. Whatever sins of the past there do not overcome the fact that Putin wants to expand back to the Soviet Union and become a world power again.
But
that's what
we're trying to
Britain and France
revive.
is not.
Well, and America's trying to revive the American empire. And the world has changed, Howard. It has changed. And it has changed before
I'm
our
looking
eyes. It has. I mean, now you have the people who've been colonized who are pushing back against their colonizers. America missed a grand opportunity to have a nut to renegotiate their relationship with Africa. And when you went to China, when you went to Africa 20, 30 years ago, you saw China going in there, cutting business deals. The AU, the African Union headquarters, which completely dwarfs our United Nations, was built by China. We've missed some opportunities, and what saddens me is that Americans don't know it, Howard. We don't know the tremendous opportunity that we've missed. We don't know how the rest of the world is developing and going on. We are living. Do you see what happened in New York last week? Part of what happened in New York, yeah, were they deluged by water? They got more water. I mean, in some insanely shrunken period of time. But the fact is, they've got an infrastructure that's more than 100 years old that no one's bothered doing anything about. Rebuilding. We're just sitting over here trying to wage war every place. In the meantime, America is literally crumbling. We can't afford this.
We can afford it.
And when Africa tried to
and raise the tax rates. Also,
I don't need to pay any more taxes. What they need to do is stop giving 62% of that money to Pentagon. That's what they're doing. Our money is being misspent, Howard. And it doesn't even go to the troops. That's a tragedy.
And Howard, when Africa tried to unify and set up an independent economy and set up an independent monetary system led by Gaddafi, America assassinated Gaddafi. I mean, so we can say whatever we want to say about Putin, and he may be demonic and it could be demonic and demonize him, and all those things could be true. But we can't justify what we've done to those countries to justify them being so anti-American. Because when it's time for them to operate in their self-interest, the American empire makes sure that they are debilitated in such a way as to be able to maintain control and dependency upon our empire. And so Putin is not the only one trying to expand the Russian empire. France and Britain and America are trying to expand their empire, which is what NATO is, an expansion of the Western empire.
Howard?
That's ridiculous.
But Howard, but these are the facts.
Trying to use false equivalence. What we're talking about is the Ukraine situation, and not go into a list of past historical ills. I'm talking about what the here and now. And what's here and now is that Russia needs to be stopped at the Ukraine. Otherwise, once again, you're going to you're turning yourselves into the spiritual heirs of Neville Chamberlain.
Appeasers.
Yeah.
That's what.
Not peacemakers, not peacemakers, but appeasers. What's the difference between an appeaser? Yeah, explain to me, Howard, what the difference between a peacemaker and an appeaser is.
An appeaser is one who isn't willing to back up his position and just wants to avoid problems no matter what, even if it's against something good. A peacemaker deals with something whereby there's a position of strength, but in order to avoid further conflict, is willing to negotiate.
Well, I tell you, I think
I'm missing the explanation.
Okay, we'll certainly.
I'm missing something.
I'm trying to. So an appeaser does what? You're just willing to take anything. Is that what you're saying? I don't want to put words in your mouth, Howard.
No, what I'm saying is that an appeaser is willing to, I guess, just do anything for peace, even if it's definitely the wrong thing.
and a peacemaker
wants to, has the strength to back it up and is not unwilling to face conflict, but is willing to avoid physical confrontation if the right conditions are met.
Can you name a peacemaker in our era?
How about Begin and Sadat?
Well, I think certainly they did have an agreement. The sad part is that people in North Africa and throughout Africa and the Middle East felt that Sadat gave up too much, and they killed him. What, 2 or 3 years later?
Yeah, they assassinated him.
No, it's not just because they were murderous. They also knew that that there's no balance in the Middle East, and certainly in that discussion. And we need to have that. I mean, you do need Israeli security, but that's tied to Palestinian justice. And we need to really have a discussion about that. We need to have a discussion about all of this, but you have to have a common, true understanding of history, Howard. And I think that Dr. Gibbs, we function with a lot of different opinions. And your opinion is I mean, it's wonderful. You have the right to it, but the fact is, you need to. There's opinion. There's no such thing as my truth or your truth. It's the truth, and then there are your opinions. So I mean, so why don't you respond to Howard and just how do we get from over here? Because you heard Audra, who has these ancestral ties, and she is, and certainly she's in her feelings about it. And that's what I hear when I hear Rachel Maddow. I hear a lot of people. I heard Colonel McGregor talk about a lot of people who've been weighing in on this conflict because their families escaped Russia, blah, blah, blah. But it's just, I heard my brother, former Congressman Jesse Jackson Jr., having a discussion about Elian Gonzalez. You remember him? The little boy down in Florida 20 odd years ago. And he was talking with Gloria Estefan, and she was saying, we need to keep him here. He should, he should live in freedom and da, da, da. And I called my brother after he got off of Larry King's show. That's where they were appearing. I said, remember, we have a migrant story too. Because remember, grandma was a migrant worker. And remember, mom's father was from the Caribbean, and he went back to the Caribbean because Jim Crow America, apartheid America was so much for him, he hated it and he left. Just said, I'm not coming back here. I will not live like this. I will not be the N-word. I'm not going to do this. And he left. And so I said, we all have these stories, but at the end of the day, I said, Elian needs to go back to his daddy. I mean, y'all can have whatever. I mean, I don't know how we're in our feelings about socialists and communists when the communists, the Chinese, there are bankers, Dr. Gibbs.
Yeah.
I mean, and our best friends are socialists. But England.
The Chinese are not, they're state capitalists.
No, but so are Russians. They're not communist anymore, Howard. And I'm saying, and if they were, that is their business. However they choose to work it out, that is their business. I think as Americans, we ought to support that. Whatever you want to do, whatever's clever, y'all got it. Somehow or another, we feel that we have the right to be the baller shot caller on everybody else's life, and I don't agree with that. Dr. Gibbs?
Well, I was going to say that whenever the U.S. goes to war against a country, the U.S. always builds them up into the new Hitler, into a threat to global security, an effort to take over the world, this kind of thing. You always hear that every single time. Vietnam, we heard it with Saddam Hussein. We hear it again and again and again and again. It's a very standard thing. It's led us to one disaster after another. I think it has to be put in context here. First of all, we're talking in the case of Russia about a country that spends, at least at the time the war began, they've increased it since. The military budget was 8% of what the U.S. spends. It was, I think, 3.5% of their GDP, 3.7% of GDP. It was nowhere near what they would have needed to undertake any kind of broad aggression. And there isn't a shred of evidence that any intention of doing that this is, again, part of being in the NATO bubble. If you're in the NATO bubble, this is all you hear. If you step outside the NATO bubble, I think people in places like India, South Africa, Brazil see it very differently. And they see the United States really as a kind of global aggressor with 750 bases on every continent, starting war after war after war after war. I think that's the way it's seen in most of the world. You know, they see Russia as a relatively weak country, which it is, without, again, it has an authoritarian government that's indisputable, although many countries have authoritarian governments. The United States has some elements of authoritarianism that we've been seeing lately, particularly, most definitely. And so I think that, but that's a separate issue from aggression. And there's absolutely nothing in the record to suggest Russia's any kind of general threat to anybody, except the Ukrainians whom they've invaded. But again, the question is, why did they invade? And a big part of that, unquestionably, is U.S. provocation. The U.S. violated an agreement not to expand NATO, a key sticking point all along. Again, Jens Stoltenberg has openly said the reason Russia invaded was because of NATO expansion. That's true. That didn't give them a right to invade. I agree. They shouldn't have invaded. Nevertheless, there's a question of why the U.S. felt so necessary to provoke this war, which they did. And, simply calling Putin Hitler, I just think that after you put in the context, we always say that every single time. And we really should be a little bit skeptical about that comparison. There are other people we can compare Putin to. Hitler's not the only one. And I think we need to be a little bit more imaginative here and think of some other examples.
Howard?
The Baltic states are also being threatened for the next target.
But you know
what?
The Baltic states. And you know what?
There's no evidence for that. There's not a shred of evidence for that.
Not only that, that's not my problem right now. My problem are the people of Lahaina who were given $700 per family. That doesn't even give you a good night's hotel room in Maui. That's my problem. My problem, no, wait. Everybody's talking about America and what we need to do for America. I got crumbling bridges. The American Society of Civil Engineers gives us a C-. We've got an infrastructure to rebuild. We've got children to educate. We've got adults to re-educate. So we can become so that we're the wealthiest, but ain't nobody feeling it. 99% of Americans cannot afford to buy a house right now. I'm reading this in Zero Hedge. You can call them right wing if you want to, but guess what? This is, as a result, housing is extraordinarily unaffordable. This is from CBS News. Homes are unaffordable in 99% of the nation for the average American. That's my problem. Now, whatever they need to work out in Europe, and they war in Europe all the time, they need to work it out. They need to either go to They need to either go to the UN. They need to do something, but I literally cannot afford to pay to be their peacekeepers or the people who wage war for them. I can't do it.
And they never stopped, Santita. That's my point. That in Europe, they never stopped warring. In Europe, they never stopped warring. They've been warring since William the Conqueror. They never stopped warring in Europe. It's always going to be one country after another. And if you keep getting drawn in to European wars, you will always get swept up in European wars. And that's what George Washington said. Many of them were from Europe. Said that if we're going to be a new country, the first thing we have to make an agreement with is we will avoid all these European confrontations, because France and England have been fighting since 1066. And the Irish and the English have been fighting for 400 years. And the Germans and everybody else have been fighting for 400 years. And it never stops over there.
I disagree. The French and the English are now pretty much on the same side.
Today.
And
they fight all the time. Everybody knows that that's part of the historical record.
But the Norman conquest was England against France.
Once again,
that's how they set up a royal family there.
So I'm talking about what is current, what is right now.
Yeah, and so are we. But you can't disconnect the right now from the over there, over yonder, right then, because history is part. No, you can't. You can't. Everything it has a context, and that's what history gives you. So, but look, honey, I'm going to have to run. But I wanted you to make your point,
Okay.
and no. I want you to be able to make your final point, and then I want Dr. Gibbs and Dwight McKee to respond to you and to put a bow on the show today. But Howard, your point, and I want to, Howard, please allow me to thank you for calling in, because even as these ideas challenge you and you disagree with them, I thank you for giving us the space to be in your ear. And I hope that you felt respected and appreciated. I hope that you'll keep listening.
To deal with the here and now and not worry about the past. That we need to look ahead and try and stop the expansion of Russia into becoming the new Soviet Union. And I think that economic difficulties are separate and apart, because once again, you should raise the tax rates on the richest and close the tax loopholes, and that would bring in plenty of money. And I think that that's something that needs to be taken care of, but that's separate and apart from whether or not it's doing the right thing to protect the brave people of the Ukraine against Russian expansion.
Dr. Gibbs?
Well, we've done a very good job protecting the people of Ukraine. I think if we were trying to protect the people of Ukraine, the United States would have agreed not to expand NATO in 2021-22, which was Russia's principal demand all along. The U.S. openly admitted it refused to negotiate on that basis. And that very likely would have prevented the invasion. Then after the invasion began, Zelensky openly said he was reconsidering joining NATO, and he was thinking about neutrality, recognizing this was the main Russian demand. And they had negotiations with the Russians in Istanbul, moderated by both the Turkish government and the Israeli government. And they looked like they were getting pretty close to signing an agreement, which would have involved neutrality for Ukraine and probably some kind of autonomy for the Donbass region. And the United States blocked it, and Britain blocked it. Naftali Bennett, the former Israeli prime minister, was very open about this. Turkish officials also were open about this. The United States basically said, we're supporting you, and you better not defy us on this and sign an agreement behind our backs. Well, had they signed an agreement, basically the war would have been nipped in the bud. Hundreds of thousands of people who have died wouldn't have died. We're now facing a situation where Ukraine is facing likely destruction if this war continues. All the evidence we have is that Russia is going to win this war. Russia's much better placed to survive a long war. For all of its weaknesses economically, it apparently is much better producing low-cost artillery shells than NATO is. This has openly been discussed in the Western media. They have a much larger manpower base. They're well equipped to survive a war of attrition. Ukraine, even with NATO support, is very likely to lose. And so I think the losers from all of this American generosity will be the Ukrainian people in the long term. And that has to be stopped. We need to go to the negotiating table and see if a negotiated settlement, even this late in the game, is possible. And that's absolutely essential, because the alternative is destruction of a country, and I don't look forward to seeing that.
Dwight McKee?
In 1913, the Germans against the British was right now. In 1941, the Germans against the British again was right now. That time, right now, the Russians was on our side. 20 years ago, Afghanistan was the right now. It took us 20 years to get out of that. Today, the Ukraine is the right now. And in 5 more years, as he identified, the Baltics will be the new right now. The right now is always right now. Because, again, these skirmishes never end. And we always justify our involvement, and even when we're involved, they're never resolved. And if you have to see ourselves in context of another imperial power competing against other imperial powers. And nobody benefits but those who the imperialists. The common people suffer on both sides. The Ukrainians are suffering, the Americans are suffering, the Russians are suffering. Everybody at the bottom suffers. The only one that prospers are the people at the top who own the bombs and the planes and who take the budget and exploit it for their own purposes. The right now is always right now.
And history always gives you context, everybody. You know, what my father says, the text without a context is a pretext. You got to have context. And you need to understand everybody's perspectives. A lot of folks have a lot of different feelings. Russia is viewed differently in different parts of the world. America is viewed differently in different parts of the world. In fact, in most of the world, America is feared and not beloved. So we missed a grand opportunity there. And I say that as an American who loves this country. I love this country for all that it is and is not, all that it really ought to be, all that it could be, should be. That's what I am. And when I go around the world, I see it. I see it. But I'm never going to stop criticizing it because I think you are critical of that which you love and those whom you love. So this is what we need. We have to be honest, and you have to understand someone else's perspective. And for heaven's sake, we're not Europe. Stop it. We need that money, that $100+ billion that we need it right here. How do you think the people of Lahaina feel? How do you think the people of East Palestine feel? How do you think the people of Appalachia who are perpetually in poverty, how do you think that they feel? They feel betrayed, and you're seeing it played out in our politics right now. And they have been betrayed by the American oligarchy, which is a global oligarchy, which does not care about anybody in the world. Jeff Bezos already told you that they're really going to get into space travel because going back to the Earth is going to be like going to Disneyland. I'm like, so Jeff, are you planning for Earth not to have a lot of people here, for it just to be a playground for you? How dare you? How arrogant. And America's going to have to get over being so arrogant. This hubris, this excessive pride and arrogance is not benefiting us at all. The world has gone on. You go to different countries of the world, they have fresh infrastructure, modern infrastructure. I mean, what happened in New York? Would you pay attention to what happened last week, Dr. Gibbs and Dwight? New York is underwater. And it's not just underwater because they got a lot of water. They're underwater because their infrastructure can't handle anything because it's an old city with an infrastructure that's more than 100 years old that gets patched up and not upgraded. That's where your tax dollars are going. That's where your money is going. While you sitting up here, you keep listening to people tell you we are the greatest, richest nation on earth, but you're not feeling it. You would think that you would be riding down the street and looking at streets of gold, streets paved with gold, and that you had access. You have access to the best healthcare and the best education. You don't. University of Chicago undergraduate costs you $100,000 a year. $100,000. Who can afford to do that? Well, when you go over there, you don't really see a lot of American students over there. I'm not going to beat those kids up. It's not their fault. The $33 trillion debt that we've got could pay for every man, woman, and child to get a 4-year public university degree for 103 years in the United States of America. You ought to be upset about that. Don't get mad with the migrants because they're getting homes and you're not. You need to be mad about homelessness, which preceded them being here. Now, you want some truth? I'm going to give it to you. Stop fixing the blame. Fix the problem. The problem is homelessness. The problem is greed. The problem is the fact that your needs are not being met. People are not your problem. These greedy people up top who own everything and give you a little bit, who want you to work for no wages at all. That's why we have Striketober. They're your problem. And you need to deal with that. Get out everybody else's business. We've got our own problems we need to resolve right here. Everybody is giving Mayor Adams and Mayor Bass and Mayor Johnson all of this pushback. And because Mayor Johnson is trying to deal with us compassionately because he doesn't want to treat people like they're trash and throw them out in the streets, everybody's angry with him, including people who voted for him. What is he supposed to do? Is he supposed to forget that he's from a family of people who sought refuge in Chicago because we were chased out of the South by white racists? The first time America dropped a bomb was dropped on American soil. The white Americans dropped it on black people in Tulsa. Come on, y'all. Because he said, you know what, I'm going to find a way to deal with these people who've been displaced. And you know what? I'm going to reach out to Mayor Johnson just as a citizen and say, okay, let's expand this. And let's figure out how we're going to deal with homelessness in Chicago. Maybe that'll make everybody feel better. Because the homeless people are not the problem. Homelessness is the problem. You got more than 10 million vacant units of housing in the United States. Nobody's talking about that. And you don't want them to move into your neighborhood anyway. So how about that? All right, y'all. I've had my rant. I know you all like that, but that's true. Oh, that's right. The Russians are coming. They're not coming over here. They're not coming over here. They're not studying about us. They're cutting deals with China and Africa and the rest of the world that is growing. America is about to not be the global reserve currency. It's already happening. And you're not going to assassinate all these leaders and stop it from happening. It's already happening, y'all. It's already happening. So just stop. So I've said that. Boom. I said it. Dr. Gibbs didn't say it. Dwight didn't say it. I did. Boom. I'll take that. I'm okay with it because I'm accustomed to being on the outs with everybody. I grew up like that. So I'm all right with it. As long as I'm on the right side of history, as long as history will absolve me, I'm okay with it. Because we're not long for this world anyway. When I see the Lord, I want the Lord to say, you know what, you were on my side. That's all I want. That which had been done unto the least of these, you fought for them, Santita. That's all I want. Good girl. That's what I want. My child. Proud of you. That's what I want. That's what I'm fighting for. And I am too close to heaven, Dwight, as the song said, to turn around now. Because I got two grandmamas over there. I got a great grandmama over there. I got grandfathers over there. I want to see them. So whatever y'all say, whatever note you send, I am not worried about a thing. Because I know where I'm trying to go. I love you, everybody. Have a great day. May God bless you real good. And everybody, get on God's side. Don't ask God to be on yours. That's not the right thing. Get on God's side. Let's do things God's way. Let's be peacekeepers. Beat our swords into plowshares. Let us study war no more. Let's study peace. Let's do that. Yvonne, you said you love my stream of consciousness rants. Well, here we are. I love you all, everybody. Stay blessed. I love you. I love you, Dr. Gibbs. Thank you for your courage. Thank you for, really, and thank you, because I know it's not easy. I know what you do is not easy, being the outlier. But you know what? History will absolve you. Dwight McKee, thank you for holding strong all of your life, for never letting go of the movement, and being patient much of the time with those of us who are trying to learn from you. Say that. Dwight looks at us and is like, would you pick up a book, please? But I love you all. Hey, everybody. God bless you, Dwight. And Dr. Gibbs, say goodbye to the Morning Stars.
Goodbye, Morning Stars. Bye, Dr. Gibbs. Thank you, Dr. Gibbs. Thank you so much.
Dwight, what were you saying to Dr. Gibbs?
I appreciate you so much, Dr. Gibbs. You are so learned.
Thank you so much for saying that. I appreciate it. It's a pleasure being on with you too, Dwight.
Well,
Thank you very much.
Yvonne said, we love your guests, brilliant speakers, and you're getting a lot of love today. You're getting a lot of love today, and I'm glad about that. I'm glad about that. I'm glad about that. So I love you, everybody. And thank you, Henry, for a great show. Everybody have a wonderful, wonderful day. Be blessed. God bless you. I will see you tomorrow, God willing, on the Santita Jackson Show. God bless.
Amen.
Amen.
Bye-bye.